There's a kind of comfort in staying where you started. The fire crackles. The shoreline doesn't change. The land gives you just enough. Enough wood for shelter. Enough food for tomorrow. An axe sharp enough to keep the dark at bay. For a while, it feels like safety. You learn the trees. You memorize the rocky coast. You stop looking over your shoulder. But the land only gives you so much. You can live here, you just can't become anything more. And at some point, you feel it. The pull. The understanding that staying still has a cost. Your companions are waiting. You take one last look at home before venturing forth. And then you step in. The water is colder than you expected. The horizon is wider than it looked from land. And for the first time in a while, you don't know what happens next. It doesn't always feel good to leave. You might lose something. You might wake up far from where you fell. You might realize you weren't ready. And when the darkness creeps in, so too comes doubt. But that hesitation, that weight, that uncertainty, that feeling is real. This concept has been circling around my head recently, about the way risk shapes a world. Because when death costs nothing, the world starts to feel bland. My character feels disposable. But when death costs too much, the world just feels punishing for no reason. Heavy in the wrong way. So the question becomes, how much risk makes a world feel real? Sometimes the answer shows up outside of MMOs. You build something together. Push off from the shore. You feel ready. The first island doesn't feel dangerous anymore. You've outgrown it. But you step too far into the dark and something stronger always finds you. It only takes one mistake, and you're back in your starter hut with nothing on your back. Reminded you weren't ready. In EverQuest, it's slower. You make the journey across the sea, desert, and swamp. You see the entrance. You feel committed. But, as it always does, something goes wrong. A missed pull, stunned before you could hit the zone line, and then you wake up somewhere else. And reminded you forgot to bind. Suddenly, the journey matters. That seems to be the difference. Risk without preparation is punishment. Risk with preparation is progression. In Valheim, you place the bed before you fight. In EverQuest, you bind before you descend. And when you don't, the world reminds you. So the idea is that punishment wasn't the main lesson. The recovery was. In Valheim, you don't quit when you die. You run back. You fight again. Maybe with a friend this time. In EverQuest, you don't delete your character. You get emergency gear from the bank. You pay for a resurrection. You make the journey back. The setback isn't the story. The return is. When you have something to lose, you move differently. You prepare differently. You fight differently. That's when the world starts to feel alive. When Monsters and Memories made death cost your spellbook, it sparked debate. Some players saw meaning in it, others saw frustration. So the developers drew from classic Dungeons and Dragons, adding cantrips, small spells you can still cast without the book. Not removing the consequence outright, but softening the edge. A simple adjustment. And that reaction is interesting, because it shows how thin the line is between tension and resentment. To me, it's just whether the systems around that hurt can encourage prep, cooperation, and commitment. Because without recovery, risk just becomes punishment. With recovery, risk becomes investment. There's comfort in the familiar. I've felt it in games and in life. It's easy to stay where you know the terrain, where the enemies are predictable, where the cost of failure is low. But growth rarely happens there. Eventually, the dungeons call you deeper. Not because you enjoy suffering, well, I know some of you do, but because understanding the reward feels different when something is at stake. Maybe that's the feeling we're really chasing. So let me ask you, was there ever a dungeon, zone, or journey that genuinely scared you? And would it still feel that way if nothing was at stake?